Welcome Transpac race fans. This is Dobbs Davis from Seahorse Magazine. I'm the U.S. editor of that monthly publication that some of you hopefully know and love. And I'm here today with Bill Lee. Those watching the Transpac, of course, know Bill Lee from Merlin, the famous 1977 record-breaking run for Monohull. And that lasted for 20 years, didn't it, Bill?
20 years.
20 years, that's awesome.
20 good years.
So I'm really honored to have Bill here with us today in our Honolulu studio. Those watching now will see that we have our 100-mile tracker. This is the public tracker that's available to you, linked from the website. This shows everybody in 1 hour updated time, and will give you all the same features that Yellow Brick has. So here, for example, Sansari, Michael Spee's boat, and a mixed team of Australians and Thai sailors. They are on a Trip 40. They're just now making their final approach. This is a Division 7 team, and they're kind of bringing up the rear in that division. Division 7 and 8 are now really making final approaches. These are the boats that started Monday a week ago. So they're well into the race, but they've been fortunate that they've been moving the entire race and had great conditions. But some of the other boats that are making final approach in here to the finish, we're over in here. Maserati finished last night. This morning, the match racing between the two 40-footers, Kehoe and 10 quarter, that was a first 40, and the other boat was a Beneteau 40.7, I believe. They had a great match race across the Pacific. The teams shook hands in the morning. They only finished 11 minutes apart. So those teams really pushed each other hard across the Pacific, and I think as a result probably are going to do very well in corrected time for their division. Making final approach in here now as we speak is Ross Perlman's Jeannot 52. This is a big cruising boat in Division 8. They're now coming around Makapu Point and on their way to Diamond Head. Next up in the train, coming through the Molokai Channel. In fact, we'll blow this up and look at it in a little more detail. So there's Ross Perlman's boat. They're in the Molokai Channel now. Winds out there are not super strong. We've had reports of 12 to 15 knots of wind is typical. Those that have sailed here know, of course, Molokai Channel famous for a lot of wind, typically 18 to 20 knots, even more. Off of Elio Point, the next one in line on final approach is Durade. This is a 1932 wood boat designed by S&S, a classic boat. Now, how many times did this boat win the Transpac, Bill? I know for sure it was 1936, and then it was a couple times in the 50s. Do you remember?
I don't have the count handy, but she did win it in 36. This was certainly one of the landmark boats in history. She had won the Fastnet race when she was new, and very, very successful, and really moved Barkman and Stevens into the offshore business.
That's right. Olin Stevens, very, very famous designer, excellent sailor, affiliated with major offshore designs, also America's Cup and the 12 meters. So this is a classic boat that's actually in the past won most of the classic ocean races, and now the current owner, or as he calls himself, the current caretaker of this boat, Matt Brooks from San Francisco, has done a great job putting together a good team for this Transpac effort. His plan, I think, is to go do these races again with Durade. So this boat's making a second tour around the planet 70 years later from when it was built. So Durade's coming into final approach. This is going to be great. They're only 30 miles out. Next up in the train will be Maserati. Boy, there couldn't be two more different designs, huh, Bill? Maserati, yeah. Volvo 70 versus Durade. I mean, here we've got yachting technology and design bookended here in the Transpac.
Yes, and you got to remember that Durade got a 5-day head start on Maserati.
That's true.
So, and you know, in the old days, the fastest boats were 10-day boats and the slowest boats were 15-day boats. Now the slowest boats are as slow as they ever were, but the fastest boats are 5- and 6-day boats, and a whole lot of boats are 7- and 8-day boats. So it's hugely changed the dynamic of the race, and the reason for the staggered start is to bring them all into Honolulu in the same time block.
And so far that's looking pretty successful. I think just about everybody on the course is going to be in here over this weekend. So Maserati, Volvo 70, very good team. They set a record for the New York to San Francisco run. Is that correct?
I didn't follow it.
Yeah, that was a few months ago. They did another, not a race of course, but a sailing record. They set that record going around Cape Horn and up to San Francisco. So Maserati is also on a bit of a world tour for trying to take some race records. They didn't do it this time, of course. Ragamuffin finished last night. Their elapsed time was actually, what was it, 14 hours out, or almost 18 hours out, I think, from Alfa Romeo's record in 2009. But certainly they tried. They just didn't have the conditions this year for a monohull record. Which, by the way, the boat that does win the monohull record wins the Merlin Trophy.
Right, and if it had no power winches and no canting keel, it would also win the barn door.
Correct. So our barn door projected trophy winner will be this boat here that I have highlighted on the screen. This is Wizard. Those that were following Transpac 2 years ago would know this boat is Bellamente. So this boat was the barn door winner 2 years ago under its previous owner, Hap Fouth. This boat is now owned by the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy in Kings Point in New York, but has been chartered to Dave Askew, and Dave has got a team on board from many places, but mostly my hometown in Annapolis. They, too, did not get record-breaking conditions this year, so I think Bellamente's run in 2009 will be faster than Wizard's, but they certainly look like the fastest monohull without powered systems right now, fixed keel and non-powered winches. They're teed up right now. They're, how far out? 80 miles out, going about 14 knots, so that's pretty good speed, Bill.
That's very good speed.
And one of our good friends, D. Smith, is on that boat. He's done a whole bunch of Transpacs, and I'm sure he's been whipping that team as hard as he can across from California. This is another boat that is the lead of the Thursday starters. Now, if you remember, the Thursday starters had a really tough time getting off the coast. They started in really strange conditions. There was a little local low pressure that had southerly winds and rain. These guys had a really hard time getting off the coast. In fact, Criminal Mischief did something unusual. They actually went north of San Nicolas Island, Bill. I don't know if you followed that.
Yes, and if you just look at the rum line, it's far further north. Either the rum line or the Great Circle. It's far further north than what the winds normally encourage you to sail. The winds normally encourage you to reach off just a little bit after the west end of Catalina and get yourself south, a little bit south of the rum line early. And it's very unusual for the conditions to put you that far north, but that's the solution. And that also occurred in 1985 when we were on Blondie. Ended up way north out of the start.
This is the group that started Thursday. As you can see, stayed fairly close to the rum line course. As Bill says, they didn't come north up here at Great Circle because to do so would have put them on the wind more and not reaching as fast as they could. They had a heck of a time going. We can go back in time in our trackers here, which is fairly clever. And if we scroll in quite a bit, go back over here to the coast and look at how they got off the coast. They really had a tough time. And I'm having a tough time scaling this out to getting to where I need to go. Excuse me, folks, I must have zoomed in a little more than I needed. There we are. So I'm going to drag it back over here. But it was actually very interesting to look at how these guys got off and what their strategies were because they really had a very strange first night in this race. Channel Islands here coming into view, and if you look at this, folks, this was Friday the 12th of July at 10 o'clock in the morning. So this was almost 24 hours into the race. 21 hours into the race to be exact. And you can see a handful of boats that had to go up around north of San Nicolas, several that had to avoid the island just to kind of get out of these strange southerlies that as you can see looped up early in the race and had them straying way far out. So a lot of extra distance sailed, and there was a lot of time tied up here at this time in the race because the wind was really light. But I think one of these guys, yeah, there they are. Criminal Mischief was one of the teams that got up there. So let's scroll back out to reality and not walk down that bad memory lane again. Bill, can you comment in general just on historically how this racetrack really looks different than it has been in years past, where typically, and I'll click everybody back on here to see their paths, typically you see this sort of S-curve in the track of the Transpac course, and we don't see that this year. We see some that did stray a little bit north when the wind lifted behind them, but quite a few, particularly those of the Saturday starters, hung very far to the south.
Well, typically there's a high pressure area to the north of the course, and sometimes it's closer to the mainland and sometimes it's more over Hawaii. And that Pacific high determines the wind direction on the course. And the nominal wind usually blows almost straight towards Honolulu from Los Angeles once you're out several hundred miles. And this gives you a tacking downwind situation where you either jibe down the middle or you favor north or you favor south. Now the way the wind tends to shift around that high is it favors you going south early, and you gradually get lifted, and maybe half or two-thirds way across you'll actually get lifted across the rum line and lifted more, and pretty soon there's a good time to jibe. And then you certainly on Merlin in 77, we probably jibed up here and came all the way in on port board for the last 2.5 days on a very good angle.
So you ended up getting headed, right? So you got lifted here, jibed, and then just got headed on port jibe into the islands.
And the high was very, very far towards the east, and or rather towards the west, and the wind direction was very east, and it was an extreme of a typical year and a very good year because nobody went that fast again for 20 years. But this is an unusual year in that they've stayed way south for better breeze and have not crossed up above for the last third of the race.
So we're going to segue over to look at this in the weather. This is, for those that have been watching my analysis shows over the last few days, you're familiar with this plot. This is the ECMWF model showing mean surface level pressure. The isobars are shown here in blue against this black background. Down here is Hawaii and the coast of California here at the start. So as you can see, kind of a typical pattern, but look at this, folks. Very unusual feature here. The high center way off to the west and here to the north, because there's been a developing low pressure system here. Now this is in more or less, let's see, this is more or less now. So if we look forward in time another 24 hours, watch this replot, you can see this low actually deepens. So this is a pretty unusual feature to have a low pressure center developing in the Northeast Pacific. But this is what accounts for all that light air that's up to the north of Rumline, even more so than normal. If I shift this over to looking at wind speeds, so rather than a pressure plot, this is showing what the projected wind is, and you can see this big zone here of light air. We'll zoom in even a little more and replot this. So look at this big zone of light air. Transpac track is somewhere along this axis here, and you certainly don't want to be up there, Bill. This is
Nope.
This is 369 knots of breeze, very light air, and this is why everybody on the Transpac course at the moment is well down here in the south. So they're down in the 15 to 18 knot range, and there's some over 20s well down to the south. We had some boats that were tracking even south of the south point on the Big Island of Hawaii yesterday. It was quite remarkable how far south everybody's gone to get at this. So I'm just going to go forward a little bit more in time. And yeah, that kind of remains consistent. Looks like the breeze is going to fill in a little bit up here in the track for the guys coming in Sunday, Monday. They may have a little bit more pressure on their final approach, but really you got to avoid up here. This looks like a death trap up there for lack of wind. So going here, and by the way, if you're trying to follow this on your own screens, you're looking at a 6-hour delay. This is the live tracker that I have access to, and it's showing everybody in real time at the moment. Let's zoom in just a little bit and see what we have for some of the classes, do a little analysis on who's out there, who's left. Divisions 1 and, well actually we do have some Division 1 boats still out there, so I'll tick off some of our remaining boats and just look at Divisions 1, 2, and 3. So these were our boats starting on Saturday, the fastest boats in the track. Some of them we've already talked about, Maserati. There's Wizard. Next coming in, Invisible Hand, Badpack and STP 65. And then this boat here, BCOM. BCOM is really the lead boat of the Division 2 boats. These are the 52s, the Transpac 52s, the boats around that size. They actually formed a pretty tight group, and a subset of that group is our HPR class. We can talk a little bit about that now. Bill is the author of the HPR rule, which is a high performance, stands for high performance rule. Basically, it's a rating rule system designed to just encourage high speed, offshore capable boats. Is that right, Bill?
Yes, yes.
And TP52s fit very nicely into that rule, as to a whole generation of other boats that we, smaller in the East Coast, we have a lot of 40-footers fitting into HPR, and the rule goes up to 72 feet currently, Bill?
That's the intent, is to cover between 26 and 72 feet.
Right. So this is our HPR eligible boats in the Transpac fleet. There are 9 boats. Actually, there's 11 boats, but 2 opted not to do HPR. But those that did are showing quite a nice grouping here. Now, there's another boat here that we don't see that is in the HPR class, and that's a boat called Meanie. The reason Meanie's not shown here is because their tracker's not working. If we go to, so the way we've been able to keep track of Meanie is by their 0600 position reports. These are the daily standings using the ORR scoring system. But if we go to HPR and take the HPR ratings for these boats and look at this on time scoring, Meanie's actually winning. So the reason they're winning, we've been looking at this a little bit. We're taking the same data in time scoring, multiplying it against their the time they have left. The time they have left, which is calculated by the distance they have left divided by their most recent VMG, their most recent speed on the course. And in looking at that, over the last 24 hours, according to this position report, and this is all available to you on the website, you can see down here these Division 2 boats are the fastest boats on the course right now, Bill.
They're in the breeze.
I mean, you know, here we've got Varuna. Varuna is going faster than Maserati, a Volvo 70. They're going faster than much larger boats because if we look at their position on the course, they're down here in the south where there's Vincetori, Natalie J, Meanie. Oh, Meanie's tracker came back on. Look at that. So they are there. Grins, Bengal, Varuna. Here we are. So this Jason Kerr design 51-footer, averaging now here. Look at this. It has them going 14 knots. These guys are really going fast. So they found the pressure down here and are riding that in on their final approach into Hawaii, and that's giving them an estimated time that's compressing for the remainder of the race, and therefore giving them better projected times in the corrected scoring. Now that's not showing up so much here in ORR scoring, Bill, but HPR is a rating system kind of devised to reward the boats for fast performance features. I don't know if you want to try to make any comments about the difference between ORR and HPR, Bill. Maybe that's something more for Dan Nolan to comment on.
Well, there's a simple answer to that, and that is that ORR is intended to rate a wide range of boats. It's intended to rate 50 years of yachting, which we now find is 80 years of yachting with Durade. And it's really intended to rate the boat you already have as opposed to a boat you designed to a rule. HPR is the opposite. It doesn't go back in history very far because it really only wants to concentrate on fast boats, and it is very much a rule you design a boat to. So it's two completely different rule philosophies, and there's absolutely a place for both.
Well, so it'll be interesting to analyze that a little bit. Plus, we were talking earlier, Bill, about how the Transpac, the ratings here done for ORR are on a Transpac model course. So perhaps they would be a little bit different in the predicted performance of the boats given the Transpac model versus the HPR ratings, which are an overall 10 to 12 knot all-around performance model. Is that correct?
Right. The HPR ratings are based on windward leeward 10 to 12 knots, whereas the Transpac ratings are custom tailored for the downwind race and use percentages of the historic course mix for both wind direction and wind speed in putting the handicaps together. Now, the HPR boats, because they're of a fairly similar type, should still be fairly close, even though they're on a different course mix than what the rule is based on.
Yeah, and while we're talking about this, I was going to try to find that Transpac model mix, because the model matrix. Do you happen to remember where that kind of how that breaks down, Bill?
Take just a minute and see if you find it. The idea is that
go ahead.
You take the historic conditions on the course and break them into both points of sail and wind strength. So down the left-hand side, you can see points of sail. You've got a deadbeat, you've got a 52-degree close reach. These are true wind angles, a 60-degree close reach, a 75-degree close reach, a 90-degree reach, 110, and then some running points of sail. And then across the top, you've got different wind strengths, which is historically what you tend to see on the course. The reason, and then there's the percentage that you're likely to encourage each thing. And you see the beat only gets a 0.5% on each of the wind strengths, less the 6 knots, because it's only 18 miles out to Catalina Island. Thereafter, they go into a close reach, and before you know it, it opens up into a 60-degree reach, so you can see the percentages of how each point of sail is being increased, and also increased for the wind speeds. There's just a little bit of light stuff at the start, and providing for a little bit of a light spot at the finish. And then the bottom row, we actually rate the amount of wind that you're likely to get. So we think a 30% chance you're going to sail the majority, you're going to sail 31% of the race in 16 knots of wind, 14% of the race in 20 knots of wind, 3% in 24 knots of wind, which is the squalls, and then you back up in the other percentages. So you can see how it's a rather complex weighting of historic conditions, and what it should do is equal an average race. And this is not tuned before the start for the anticipated condition. This is the long history of conditions on the course, which introduces a luck factor. If you have a light air boat on a light air year, you're not going to have that. You're going to have a little bit of an edge. If you got a heavy air boat on a heavy year, you'll have a little bit of an edge. but an average boat on an average year, or the law of averages out, and everybody should win once in a while, which is one of the underlying things you want, as long as, you know, the well-sailed, well-prepared boats should win more often.
Yes, and those at Ocean Race, of course, know that luck's a huge factor. We try to engineer rating solutions as best we can, but we don't have control in the weather. But this is certainly a good historic average of the conditions, and I think it surprises a lot of people to see the heavier percentages, you know, here in the 12 to 14 and 16 knot range. A lot of people associate Transpac with downwind running and big breeze, and that's because a lot of the photos are taken out here in the Molokai Channel.
They go to a lot of work to get those photos, because they're the most photogenic ones.
That's right. And so speaking of which, we'll get a lot of that this afternoon as these final boats come in. Here's our finishers tracks again, where we'll see other boats coming in, the trailers in division, like here, Sleeper Division 8. There's a few others. Now, there's one boat out on the course that we understand is retired. That's Aquarius. We got a report this morning that they were turning their engine on. However, I think they've got a long way to go, something like 600 miles or so. Anyway, so that's our report for today. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I thank Bill for being here.
Well, thank you, Dobbs. It was great to be here.
And we look forward to bringing you another race analysis, hopefully a little earlier tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have some other good results for you and some other good analysis. So for Transpac Yacht Club, thanks for tuning in. I'm Dobbs Davis. So long for now.